Rule number 2, no stalking of any variety. That includes everything from following them, to showing up accidentally at places where you think they'll be, to driving past their house, setting up camp down the road from their house, or peering uninvited through their windows. It also includes all the different methods of stalking online, such as obsessively checking their social media profiles, setting up fake profiles in an attempt to re-access the things you've been blocked from, and delving into the lives of anybody who's new in their lives. Then we have all those efforts you may be making to guess their passwords and to gain access to areas where you really shouldn't go. Of course, if you already have their passwords, it's going to be hard to resist the temptation to use them. But in doing so, you risk opening yourself up to a lot of unnecessary hurt. If you're somewhere you shouldn't be, don't be surprised if you see something you really don't want to see. You're going to have to decide if knowing instead of thinking is going to be better than being blissfully ignorant. Our advice is to let them know you have their passwords, not just because of finding out something upsetting, but because obsessively checking on them, in any form, involves constantly keeping them in mind. And this is the exact opposite of what you need to do right now. In the meantime, you should probably change your own passwords too, just in case. Rule number 3, stop anything you're doing to try and make them jealous. That includes everything from accidentally sending messages to them instead of your latest date, imaginary or otherwise, to dressing up in your lowest and tightest Lara Croft, or your most suave and sophisticated James Bond outfits, and making it your mission to make out with their friends. All these kinds of things are much more transparent than you realize, and most often come over as sad, or desperate, or a mix of the two. This also extends to anything you pass on in secret to mutual friends, with the hope that they won't keep it that way, or anything even more blatant you might post on social media, including status updates about how you enjoyed last night with your new friend. Trust us, if it isn't true, don't post it. It'll only end up backfiring and blowing up in your face. And if it is true, don't post it either. If you're honestly enjoying your new life so much, then you won't have time to tell everybody about it, will you? Which brings us to rule number 4. Rule number 4, cut back on your social media activities. Over the next few days, we'll help you take control of your mood and your environment. But you can do both those things right now by choosing what you expose yourself to on social media. In this respect, you could start off by unfollowing or blocking updates from your ex and anyone else who's likely to share something that might upset or anger you. You could also change your relationship status to nothing, the bottom option, which won't appear in your newsfeed and is less controversial than single, or it's complicated, or anything else for that matter. But the fact remains that depending on who and what you have on your newsfeed and how you interact with it, social media can be very bad for you at times. And this is particularly true at times when your life seems terrible and everyone else's looks better in comparison. For that reason alone, we'd advise you to come off social media altogether and delete it from all your devices, at least for the time being. This will achieve the same as the blocking and unfollowing advice and prevents you from doing many of the other things that we've spoken about already, so long as you're firm with yourself and you keep it deleted. It also prevents you from getting involved in any mind games or public slanging matches. We see a lot of these. But the thing is, if you are what you do, and you are, and you're spending your time being bitter and angry and thinking of ways that you can get one up or one over on somebody else, then what kind of person do you think that makes you? The phrase to remember here is social media cool down, not social media meltdown. So anything you do to prevent the latter, plus a deep sense of embarrassment when next year is back as a memory on your most popular post, it's definitely for the best. Besides, we'd imagine that anybody who truly needs to know your business would have some other way of contacting you. So, come off there for now if you can. Rule number 5, stop anything you're doing to get them into any kind of unnecessary trouble. Of course, we don't know what has happened between you and your ex, and it might actually be a step forward for you to contact the police about something you should have done already. We hope you can take that step. But please don't get your ex into any unnecessary trouble with the police or with anybody else. Whatever you do can have knock-on effects that you may not consider in the moment and in your quest for justice and revenge. This is why you need to consider your actions very carefully right now, especially if there are children who could be affected by them. And that goes for getting yourself into trouble too, which brings us to rule number 6. Rule number 6. Stop anything you're doing to get yourself and your friends into unnecessary trouble. Anger is something else we'll get to grips with later on in the plan, but we tend to believe that when we direct our anger towards revenge, it makes us feel better. Scientifically and statistically, this is far from being true. In fact, angry thoughts, acts of revenge, and the justifications we give ourselves for our actions all serve to prolong our negative moods, and this can be more detrimental to our own health than anybody else's. On the other side of the coin, our acts of revenge can also make us feel very guilty, and so we should sometimes, since the things we do in rage can have a far wider impact than we plan or imagine. Think, for example, of what happens when we damage a car that will now need repairing before a son or daughter can see their father, or a mother can take her children to school. And what use are we to anybody, our children and employers included, if we end up in a cell or with court dates to schedule? So no stealing or damaging their stuff, and no harming or even threatening to harm them, their family, their friends, or their pets. In fact, no acts of revenge at all. And that includes telling personal secrets and sharing intimate videos. When you do these things, there's every chance that you're not just hurting the person you want to hurt, and you're almost definitely hurting yourself in some way too.